All right. Hello, everyone. We're going to be getting started now. So I want to say hello to all of you, our newly admitted Tridents for fall 2021. And whether you're joining us from inside of the US or from the other side of the world, I want to say on behalf of the International Students and Programs Office, also known as ISPO, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Kyle Arganza, and I am an intake advisor here at ISPO. Okay. Now, there are a few housekeeping items I want to go over before we begin today. First, you're on listen only mode, so you can hear us, but we can't hear you. Second, we are recording this webinar, and this webinar will be posted online at iwebinars.ucsd.edu. So you'll be able to view this webinar later on if you wanted to reference something again. And lastly, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box to get your questions answered. And even if we aren't able to answer your questions today through chat or during our Q&A session at the end of this presentation, we'll do our best to make sure we provide answers by updating our coronavirus FAQ page for newly admitted students. So now let's begin. I'm happy to welcome you to our session, Know the Rules Studying Inside of the US. And I would like to introduce Pauline Arla de Guzman, who is a manager of international student services here at ISPO. And she will be presenting the session for you all. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you, Kyle. Hello, everyone. It's so very nice to meet you all. As Kyle mentioned, my name is Pauline Erla de Guzman. I am the manager of student services here at ISPO. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I've been with ISPO from 2017, so not too long here, but this has been a very different year, due to the pandemic. So I'm so happy to meet some of you. I think I recognize a lot of names here in our participant list. So it's very nice to be in your presence. I'm so happy to be here with you today. During our session today, we have a very brief agenda, but lots of information to learn. So we'll go over our documents first. We will do what's called a document self-check. So if you have your immigration documents with you today, please have those handy. We'll also go over the rules that you all will need to know as an F1 or a J1 student inside of the US in order to maintain your student status. And of course, as many of you have recently traveled or are traveling or will travel in the future, we'll go over some brief travel resources as well as what you can do if you're ever experiencing a travel emergency. Now, during the session, you may see this box pop up. It's called a What Would You Do box. This is our way of engaging with you through this virtual session. We'll be playing videos. We'll have questions that we'll ask of you. So please do locate the raise your hand function on your Zoom panel. And when it is time for these boxes or our video questions, please do engage with us and raise those hands. All righty, so let's go ahead. Let's jump right in. All right, so for those of you who have your documents today, please do take them out now. I'll give you a couple of minutes as I talk about some other topics to take out your documents. Make sure that you have your passport, right? Inside of your passport, you might have your visa page inside of it. You should also have, if you're an F1 student, your Form I-20. If you are a J1 student visiting or with us today, please take out your Form DS 2019. And if you've recently entered the US, please take out your most recently issued Form I-94. If you are still in your home country at this time and you are planning to arrive to the US, in the coming weekend or so, or next week, you won't have your most recently issued I-94 quite yet. This is generated after arrival. So please do take out the first 3 documents just so we can review those together. Okay, so while you take those out, some very general reminders about your immigration documents. What we'll be doing together today is called a document self-check. So this should be done every single time you enter the US. Okay, you want to look at your documents, make sure each time you enter that all of your documents are up to date, they're correct, they're valid, you're here in good standing. That was my last bullet here, but we'll jump right back up to the top. My first bullet is to never discard documents. So here during your program at UC San Diego, you may receive various updated I-20s or DS 2019s from our office. Each time you request for a change to be made on your immigration document, we may need to issue you an updated Form I-20 or Form DS 2019 reflecting that specific change. And the most recent I-20 or DS 2019 that you receive from our office, that is the one that you always want to use, anything that is the most recently issued document. Now, what does it mean if I issue you a new updated document? Can you throw away your old ones that we issued you in the past? Never discard any documents that you receive either from our office, any schools or institutions that you studied in while holding a Form I-20 or DS 2019 here in the US as well. Any immigration documents that you've received while passing through the port of entry, or applying for any other immigration benefits in the past, such as OPT, CPT, anything like that. In the future, many of our students go on to apply for future benefits such as work visas, or maybe permanent residency or other sorts of benefits. And often they will ask in reference for Form I-20s from your time in your undergraduate degree or maybe your master's program. So really, really important never to discard any of your immigration documents. Buy a nice, neat folder maybe, or maybe a digital or virtual way to keep your documents, secure so that you have copies, if not originals, at all times. Our second bullet here is to make sure that you keep all of your documents up to date, and for the ones that need to remain valid at all times, that you keep those valid. We'll talk about how to keep your documents up to date, valid, and how to renew them if they need to be renewed. Accessibility of your documents. Ooh, this is a big tip that I like to share with students. So for those of you who have just arrived to San Diego, I'm sure you are busy exploring our beautiful beaches. We have lots of greenery here in San Diego. It's a beautiful place to explore. You probably don't want to bring all your immigration documents, in your back pocket as you're on the beach having a great time. So we talk about accessibility of documents. While you're traveling domestically, the regulations do state that your passport is your main form of identification. However, please be smart about what you are carrying with you depending on what activity you're engaging in at one time. Make sure your documents are kept safe, and that if you need to, they are accessible. I always advise students to keep digital copies. So take a picture of your passport page in your phone, take a picture of your visa, I-94, Form I-20, all of your documents. Make sure that you have those digital copies. If you need them, you'll always have them. All right, and then back to our last bullet, make sure that whatever we do today in your document self-check, that you do each time that you enter the US. Right, that should have given you all enough time to go ahead and take out those documents. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn to our first one. Please take out your passports. Everyone's passports will look a bit different depending on your country of issuance and citizenship. All right, so there are some components on the passport that are present for all passport holders regardless of country. And those specific ones are, your name, of course. It will show also your date of birth. Some and many of your passports might show your nationality, city of birth, specifically the place of issuance of your passport. And what's more important actually is this little section here for date of expiration. So you want to be mindful of when your passport will expire. Regulations state that you must hold a valid passport for at least 6 months into the future. Okay, so take a look at your passport expiration date and just note that if you are nearing that date, okay, you want to reach out to your embassy, your country's embassy or country's consulate here inside of the US. We have one here I'm sure you can locate. If you're abroad traveling perhaps and it happens to expire while you're abroad, you can also of course renew it outside of the US. Renewals of passports vary depending on your consulate or your embassy. I know for US citizens, it can be expedited to 6 weeks or 8 weeks, but that's still quite long. Please do check with your embassy or consulate to see how long in advance you should reach out to renew your passport. Okay. And again, your passport needs to be valid for at least 6 months in the future, and it can be renewed inside or outside of the US. Okay. So inside of your passport, if you turn to your visa page, that's what we will renew next, or that's what we will review next. So if you flip to your F1 or your J1 visa page inside of your passport, let's review that together. Okay. So a good friend has explained a visa a very specific way to me, and they've described it like a key. Your visa is like a key. And I love the way that this is explained because it really is very true, and it helps me to remember and understand visa validity. So your F1 or your J1 visa inside of your passport, this is your entry document. So you need this F1 or your J1 visa to be valid at the time of entering the United States. Okay, so it's like a key. In order to get into your house, you need that key to get inside your house. Okay, but like a key, if you're already inside your house, if you put that key down, all right, or you put it away and you don't see it for a while because you're already inside of your house, it's okay. There's no problem since you're already inside. Even if you were to lose that key while you were already inside your house, no problem. You're already inside. The same goes for your visa. So if you have a valid visa, yes, you may seek entry to the US. However, once you are inside of the US, if your visa expires, it is okay. You do not need to depart the US because your visa expires. Okay. Now, you can remain in the US with an expired visa as long as you are maintaining your F1 or your J1 status. And we'll talk a little bit later about what that means. What does it mean to maintain my status? What does it mean to hold valid F1 or J1 status in the US? There's a lot of terms that we refer to here, so please do ask for clarification if needed. So let's look at your visa page now. You'll notice that there are a couple of values here and fields. The first is your entries. So M stands for multiple. And if you see an S under this entries field, it stands for single. This refers to the number of times that you may seek entry to the US during the validity of your visa. So if your visa expires, let's say 5 years from now, between now and 5 years, or whenever this expiration date listed here is, you may enter either one single time if it says an S, or you may enter multiple times if it holds an M value. Okay, so that's what this entries code here means. Okay, now the next field that we want to look at is your visa type or your visa class. This will tell you what non-immigrant classification you entered the US in. So this should respectively say F1 if you have a Form I-20 or J1 if you have a Form DS 2019. And lastly, this expiration date. So this expiration date, as you can see, I don't have a date here, but this date should always be valid at the time you are entering the US. Okay, so just note that. So let's say that you have a visa, an F1 visa, and this expiration date says November 30th of 2021. That happens to be in the middle of our fall quarter, okay? So you don't need to leave necessarily by November 30th of 2021. As long as you are following all the rules and maintaining your status, you're okay to stay. However, let's say you decide to go home next summer, summer of 2022. You decide to leave, go home, see your family, see your friends in your home country. Since your visa has already expired, in order to come back from your vacation next summer, you do first need to go to a US embassy or a US consulate in your foreign country or a country outside of the US, and you do need to apply for a renewal of your visa in order to come back in. Because again, it's like that key, all right? It's okay if it expires while you're inside of the US, but once you enter, once you're outside of the house, you need to get a key again in order to come in. Now, whenever you need to renew your visa, students always ask, oh, I don't want to leave. Can I just renew it while I'm here inside of the US? So unfortunately, you cannot renew your F1, your J1 visa from within the US. Just like a key, you have to get one from outside in order to get in. So you do need to apply for a US visa to be renewed or issued from a US embassy or a US consulate from outside of the US. Okay. So here's our first what would you do box. So I'm hoping that you can all locate those raise hand functions just in case you want to raise your hand for this question. You are inside of the US and notice that your F1 visa is expiring in 2 months, which is in the middle of the fall quarter. Can you remain in the US legally? So let's see those hands. Do we have hands showing that you can enter the US? Okay, I see a few hands here, so that's great. So yes, you can remain in the US legally, as we've discussed, as long as you are maintaining your status or following all of the rules and so forth that we'll be discussing today. All right, great job, everybody. Okay, the next document that we'll be discussing is your Form I-20 or your Form DS-2019 if you're a J1 student. There are a couple of sections that I'd like for you to be aware of on your documents here. The first for our Form I-20 and likewise for our Form DS-2019 is your biographical information. So this will always be at the very first top section of your immigration document. You may also locate at the top right-hand corner for our F1 students, sorry, top left-hand corner for our F1 and top right-hand corner for our J1s, your CVIS ID number. We will ask you what your CVIS ID number is. N0, it's going to start with an N00 and then be followed by a lot of other numbers. So just so you understand where your CVIS ID number might be, this is where that is. Following your biographical information, you will have your school's information. So UC San Diego's information. On our DS 2019, you'll have your program sponsors information, which is also UC San Diego. There will also be details regarding your program of study and financials. Under your program of study, in your academic section of your immigration document, you want to locate your program dates. For our DS 2019, for our J1 students, it is in the form covers period, which is on the middle top left-hand side of your document. For our F1 students, it should be in the middle of your program of study field. So what's really important is that you locate that program end date. Whatever program end date is listed there is referred to as your expected program end date. So this end date can move if you finish faster and you take a lot of classes and so you finish earlier than expected. We can always shorten this date. If you need more time, we can also extend this date. However, the key to remember is that if you need more time to complete your program of study, you must extend or apply for an extension of your program end date before the current end date listed. Can't tell you how many students have immigration issues because they completely forget about their Form I-20 or their Form DS-2019. They don't extend those end dates. So it's really important that you look at that end date now, be mindful of what it is, and if you need more time, extend it. There are other updates on this immigration document that you might need to make. So if any of these fields change, such as your education level, you are admitted from a BS program now into a BS-MS program, for example. So you're changing education level to a higher degree program. You do need to notify ISPO. If you're changing your major, you also need to notify ISPO. Any changes to enrollment, such as taking less than full-time enrollment, maybe taking a gap quarter, departing the US, withdrawing from the university, maybe UC San Diego might not be the school for you and you'd like to transfer to a different school. Any changes that might impact the information listed on this document, please do submit a change to ISPO within 10 days of that change. All of your changes should be submitted through the iPortal. Many of you are familiar with ISPO's online document request system, the iPortal. So please do report those changes through there so we can make those changes as soon as possible on your immigration documents. Okay. Right, the next document that we'll be going over is the electronic Form I-94. Not all of you will have this yet, depending if you're physically here in the US or if you're outside of the US, but you can think of your Form I-94 as your arrival and departure record. So this is an electronic record of each time that you exit the US and each time that you enter the US. It is important for you to generate your electronic Form I-94 each time you enter, because once you pass through the port of entry, an immigration officer will manually input your information and essentially verify that you entered the US in valid status. So we'll go over what your Form I-94 might look like so you're familiar with it. And the components of your Form I-94 so that you know how to check to make sure it's correct. But when you are ready when you're ready to generate your Form I-94 because you've entered the US, then you will visit i94.cbp.dhs.gov. And then once you get to this website, you're going to click a button that says Get Most Recent I-94. It will then take you to a page where you need to input your passport information. So you'll put your first name, last name, date of birth, and your passport number that you use to enter the US. Once you generate and input all of this information, then a PDF will appear. You can print this PDF, which is what we suggest. Also keep a digital copy on your phone. But once you have this Form I-94 PDF, take a look at it and make sure that it is accurate. The first thing is the class of admission. This tells us what you entered the US in and what classification you entered the US in. So make sure that if you have a Form I-20 and an F1 visa, that it says F1. Make sure that you have a Form DS-2019 or a J1 visa that it says J1. If the class of admission is incorrect, please do let us know by contacting an ISPO advisor so we can provide some follow-up regarding how to correct this. The next field that you want to look at is this admit until date. Now, this date tells us how long you are permitted to remain in the US under this specific class of admission, F1 or J1. As an F1 or a J1 visa holder, you should not have a date here. Okay, the value that appears after admit until date should always state D/S, which stands for duration of status. This means that as long as you are following all of the rules and regulations that we'll talk about here shortly and maintaining your immigration documents, that you may stay here as long as you are maintaining that status. So there is no specific date that you need to depart the US by. So again, if you do see a date here, that is an error. So please do contact us so we can help you to correct it. And of course, take a look at your surname, first name, your biographical information. Ensure all of that information is correct as well. In the future, you may be applying for benefits such as a social security number or perhaps work authorization, and they will always ask for your Form I-94 showing that you're here in valid status. So it's really important that this is all correct. Make sure that you double check that upon entry for accuracy. Okay. All right, so this specific reporting requirement is actually not reflected on your immigration documents. However, it is quite important. The regulations state that you must report your US address as well as your foreign address in your home country to your institution, so to UC San Diego, within 10 days of any change. So many of you might be living on campus at this time, in which case your Triton link address and your current address within the system might state a UC San Diego address. If you visit tritonlink.ucsd.edu, you should be able to report your addresses. Please make sure within 10 days of any change that your current address, which is here in the US, or your permanent address, which is usually outside of the US, that those fields are updated correctly. For the duration of the pandemic, many of our students have been reporting their current address is a foreign address outside of the US. If you happen to depart the US anytime during your program and you are engaged in remote learning, you may go ahead and update your current address to a foreign address. Make sure that you do that within 10 days, again, if any change. There's also another field known as your emergency contact information that we do encourage all of our students to make sure is filled out and up to date at all times. Unfortunately, once in a while, we do have a student who might be hospitalized, or something does happen where we do need to get in touch with an emergency contact, whether it be a roommate, a next of kin, a family member who might be here in the US or nearby, or perhaps it is your family back home in your home country. But whoever we should contact on your behalf if we are unable to contact you directly and do need to reach you, make sure that you are safe and have support, please do update your emergency contact within Triton Link. Okay, here's a quick look at how to do that. All right. So we're nearing the end of our immigration document self-check. Of course, you'll all be professionals at looking at your own documents, knowing what to look for in no time. But this is a really important note, so I want everyone to pay attention now. If you have recently arrived to the US, and this is the first time that you have arrived to begin in-person courses using the Form I-20 that you received from UC San Diego, then you do need to check in with us. The way that you will check in so that we can make sure that you are here in good standing is by logging into iportal.ucsd.edu and submitting the check-in for I-20 or DS-2019 activation. It's really important that you submit this form so that we can verify that you are physically located in the US and that we can go ahead and we can activate your CVIS record. We'll talk about what that means momentarily here. But it's really, really important that you submit that check-in form. So please go ahead and do that as soon as you can once you enter the US. In order to submit the check-in form, it will require that you upload your electronic Form I-94, which is proof that you've physically entered in the correct F1 or J1 status. So please go ahead and do that. We understand that there might be some changes to your enrollment plans, or you might be experiencing travel delays or visa delays. So if you do need to change the program start date on your Form I-20 to reflect that you will not be entering in the fall quarter and that you will be instead entering in a future quarter, please do submit the new admit I-20 or DS-2019 amendment or reprint request so we can adjust that start date for you. And whichever route you take, please make sure that your address in Triton Link is up to date and correct. Okay. So we have completed our document self-check. You're all now very well versed in your immigration documents, and you should know what to look for each time you enter the US. I'm going to share a link in the chat here, and that is itravel.ucsd.edu. I don't know if I highlight this very important link in our presentation today, but all of the information that we just went over, including your document self-check, resources on generating your Form I-94, notes and tips, what documents to carry when you're traveling. All of that is found at itravel.ucsd.edu. So please do reference that website if you have any questions about domestic international travel. All right, so here we are. We'll begin our discussion now on the rules and regulations that you need to follow as an F1 or a J1 student here in the US. This is a very general overview of these rules. However, it's really important that you always check in with ISPO if you have any questions about something that you might be doing that might impact your immigration status. We can always help and advise you and help you to understand what impacts they might have. So before we jump into those rules, let's talk about maintaining your status. You're going to hear this a lot from not only our office, but many campus partners, or maybe in immigration regulations that you might read, government websites, and so forth. Whenever we refer to the term maintaining your F1 or J1 status, or do you hold an active SEVIS record, or do you have valid status, it means that you are here in the US in F1 or J1 status, you are maintaining your Form I-20 or DS 2019. Any changes on there, you've updated us in a timely manner, and that you are following all of the rules that we're going to go over today. Okay, that's what it means. It means that you are in good standing. You're here doing exactly what you need to do. So when you first receive a Form I-20 or a Form DS 2019 from UC San Diego, that document will always be in initial status, okay? No matter what you do in terms of entering and beginning your program of study. Many of our students are what we refer to as SEVIS transfers, meaning you might have pursued an undergraduate or a different program here in the US, maybe from community college at a different institution, and they issued you a Form I-20. You now have transferred that Form I-20 with that corresponding SEVIS number on the top. You've now transferred that to UC San Diego. And we issued you an I-20 as well, an initial I-20, and it has that same exact SEVIS ID number that your previous school had. You are what's known as a SEVIS transfer. If you did not depart the US from the time that you ended your program or maybe pursued OPT at your lower level, from the time that you are now here waiting to start your program, you do still need to submit the check-in to let us know that you're physically here. But no matter how you're starting your program, your I-20 will always be in initial status until the program start date listed on your Form I-20 or your Form DS 2019. So look at your document. Those should have something like a fall start date or maybe early summer. In order for us to change your status from initial to now active, you do need to first submit the check-in form, okay? Once you submit that check-in form, then our team knows that, okay, this student is here, they're enrolled full-time, they are following all of the rules that we've outlined for them. We can go ahead and we can activate their SEVIS record or their I-20, okay? Now, once you submit that check-in form and we process it, you're gonna follow all of the rules that we outlined today, and your record will remain in active status for the duration of your program. Now, we do have some students who do not follow all the rules, in which case you may fall out of status or you may lose your status. But to be out of status is not a good thing to hear. I know that you're all great students, so that won't happen to you, but it does unfortunately happen to some of our students. And so just be mindful that if you get notice that you do not have valid status, you do need to talk to our office as soon as possible so we can figure out how to get you back into valid status. So your I-20 will remain active throughout the entire duration of your program. Now, once you reach the very last day of enrollment in your degree program, okay, that might be the same date as what is listed on your Form I-20 now, or you might finish earlier, or you might need to extend it to a future date. Whatever the day is, whenever you end classes, your last day of taking classes at UCSD in your specific program, you will then enter into what's called a grace period. For F1 students, you have a 60-day grace period. For J1 students, you have a 30-day grace period. During this grace period, your SEVIS record and your Form I-20 or DS 2019, it'll remain in an active status. However, it's a period of time where you need to take the next step, figure out what are you going to do next. You can apply for work authorization, start working through some other types of employment benefits under your visa type, F1 or J1. Perhaps you have been admitted into graduate school, so you can transfer your I-20 to a new school or maybe start a new program here at UC San Diego. You can also change status during this period of time, or if you decide, I'm just going to pack up my things, I think it's time to go back home and apply what I've learned back home in my home country, you can also depart the US during this grace period. Now, if you take action to maintain your status, you don't leave the US and decide you want to go home, then you can maintain your status and remain here in a continued active status after graduation, perhaps. However, if you don't take any action within the 60 days or you depart the US, your SEVIS record and your status will automatically complete and you will be out of status. So it's a quick tutorial on your timeline here and how your SEVIS record and how your status moves from initial to active, hopefully remains in active status until through your grace period you decide what to do next. Okay. All right. So here are some general rules that you need to follow in order to maintain your status. The first one, the most important one for many of our international students, is full-time enrollment. Here at UC San Diego, full-time enrollment is defined as 12 units each academic quarter. Our academic quarters are fall, winter, and spring. In the summer, it is a vacation term, so unless you started your program in the summer, full-time enrollment is not required in the summer. However, for the fall, winter, and spring terms, you are required to enroll in 12 units. We'll talk about some exceptions to the full-time requirement of 12 units for our international students. You must also make sure that you update your I-20 or DS 2019, so extend that program end date if you need to, or make other changes as necessary. Maintaining academic standards and integrity, maintaining academic standing and integrity. This refers to making sure that you are following all of the expectations of your professor and faculty during each class, and that you are excelling with integrity, honesty, and that you're doing your own work. So we'll talk a bit about that. Federal rules and regulations. What rules might be different here in the US than what you are used to back home? What should you be mindful of? And then lastly, working with proper authorization. A lot of you will work and apply for employment benefits while you're here in the US under your F1 or J1 status. So we'll talk about some tips about how to make sure that you are not working illegally without authorization. So this portion here has quite a bit of video. So please do turn up your volume and listen along. The video will ask you a question, and so I'd like to see those hands up or down depending on what you think at the end of this video. All right.
International students must enroll in 12 units each academic quarter. There are some reasons for taking less than 12 units, but getting a bad grade isn't one of them.
Okay, let me see those hands. Do you think that if you are getting a bad grade in a class, it's okay to drop that class and fall below 12 units? Okay, so this is actually true. You cannot drop below 12 units because you are afraid of getting a bad grade in the class. A lot of our students, especially in their first quarter or so, will experience a learning curve because the quarter system might be very different from what they're used to, either in your home country or previous institution. The quarter system was only 10 weeks. It's a little bit faster than the semester system. And you can fall behind quite easily. And so you will get used to acclimating to your US classrooms in the following quarter, but you might experience a little bit of a learning curve. So let's go over some exceptions that students can apply for if they are wanting to take less than 12 units. If a student needs to take less than 12 units in order to maintain your status, remain in the US legally, you should have applied for and received approval for what is known as a reduced course load. We also refer to this sometimes as an RCL, okay? So a reduced course load is basically permission to take less than 12 units and maintain your status, still have good visa status. There are 3 exceptions in order to be approved for a reduced course load. International students will only be eligible to take less than 12 units for these 3 specific reasons. The first is an academic reason. You can only do this once in your entire degree program. You do have to maintain at least 6 units, but if you are having difficulties with English language or reading requirements, if you're having a hard time acclimating to American teaching principles, or maybe you are taking a higher division course and you're not quite prepared for that class. These might be some reasons you may apply for reduced course load. The second reason is a medical reason. You were diagnosed with something that does not allow you to fully concentrate on enrolling in 12 units because you need time to recover. So that's another reason you would need to have a valid doctor's note recommending that you take less than 12 units for a specific quarter. And we can also approve that you maintain your status with a reduced course load for that specific reason. And the last reason is it is your very final quarter. So in your final quarter, you might only need one class left to graduate. If that's the case, you may also apply for a final quarter reduced course load. Any other reasons outside from these three will not allow you to receive approval for a reduced course load, in which case you will not be maintaining your valid status if you take less than 12 units. So if you have any questions about this, you may speak to an ISPO advisor so that we can help advise you appropriately depending on your specific case. Okay, let's take a look at our next video.
I should always note the program end date listed on my Form I-20 or Form DS-2019. If I don't complete my program by this date, I need to apply for an extension before this date, or I can face problems with my immigration status.
All right, let me see those hands. Should you extend your program end date before the end date listed? I should see lots and lots of hands go up. I should see everyone's hands go up. Right, very good. Okay, everyone, good job. Yes, again, I don't know how many times I said this in today's presentation. Look at that program end date and make sure that you update it before the date listed on your Form I-20 or DS-2019. Other things such as taking less than 12 units, like we talked about, maybe not enrolling for a specific quarter, taking a gap quarter or a leave of absence, applying for work authorization, changing majors, changing your status or degree level, any type of changes to your enrollment or the information, again, on your Form I-20 or DS-2019, these require action on your CVIS record. So please do visit ISPO to learn more about how to report these changes, or you can visit our website and we have a lot of helpful information to help you make sure you understand what you need to update when. Okay. Now let's talk about academic standing, integrity, and academic honesty. Let's watch this next video.
If my friend and I study together, it's okay to submit the exact same assignment and paper to our professor, since we'll probably come up with the same answers.
Okay, what do you think? Can you and your friend submit the same exact paper to your professor since you both studied together? Right, it's false. So I did not see too many hands up, which is a good thing. All right. It's really important that whenever you enroll in the course, you review that syllabus. Make sure that you understand what is expected of you when it comes to submitting research, when it comes to citing specific research within your documents and coursework. Make sure that you understand what is expected of you when you are collaborating with your classmates and conducting research with other members in your class. UC San Diego stands very firmly when it comes to academic integrity. So whenever we have students who do have issues with academic integrity, the office that does handle and helps that student succeed academically is the Academic Integrity Office. They have a great website on academic integrity and ways to make sure that you are excelling with integrity. It's aio.ucsd.edu. Unfortunately, each year we have a group of students who are not clear on the expectations when it comes to academic integrity, and they do face violations such as suspension or academic conduct. So please do make sure that you are checking in with your faculty and your professors to make sure you understand what is expected of you. If you do face suspension due to academic integrity violations, you are not permitted to enroll at UC San Diego, perhaps, and it does impact your immigration status. You cannot keep your I-20 or DS 2019 here at UC San Diego. So it's a huge deal. It impacts students tremendously. So please do make sure that whenever you are in doubt, always do your own work, okay? All right, here's another video.
The legal age to drink and buy alcohol in my home country is 18, so I think that might be true in the US also.
All right. The legal age to drink in your home country is 18. Do you think it's 18 in the US also? Very good. I did not see too many hands up. Very good. Okay, for the 20 of you who decided to raise your hand, I'm so sorry, but the legal age to drink and purchase alcohol in the United States is 21. So this goes to the point of rules here in the US, maybe different from what is what you're familiar with in your home country. Here in the United States, we have 50 states, and each state might have a different law regarding a policy. And so that is what is known as a state law. However, there might be some regulations that all 50 states need to follow, and it will be known as a federal law, okay? Now, our international students who might be here in California might be familiar with the regulations and state laws about marijuana. So marijuana is legal in the state of California. However, it is not recognized as a federal law. So marijuana is not legal in all 50 states, which makes it a state law and not a federal law. As an international student, you are subject to federal laws no matter what state you are in. So it is really important to understand that if you are ever to come into contact with law enforcement, so perhaps through driving under the influence, or if you are ever caught for any reason and detained or arrested, you are subject to federal law. So just make sure that you are understanding what applies to you. Understand that you should stay away from all of those things that might get you in trouble, and to always contact ISPO if you have any questions regarding federal and state laws while studying in the US. Okay, I think this might be our last video, and it's about working in the US. So let's go ahead and let's watch this one.
Now that I have a social security card, I can work anywhere, anytime.
Okay, do you think that having a social security card and a social security number allows you to work anywhere, anytime? What do you all think? Okay, very good. Again, not very many hands up, so that's good. It's great. So we'll talk about social security numbers actually in a different session. If you have not already, please do watch the Working in the US. There's a specific one for graduate students and another one for undergraduate students. Please do watch that. We go through employment eligibility and different types of employment that F1 and J1 students can engage in during their program of study. So please do watch that for more details. However, if an individual in the US is authorized to work and receives a paid employment opportunity, okay? So maybe you're working on campus and you are offered a paid employment, or perhaps you are obtaining work authorization through CPT to work off campus sometime during your program of study. Because it's a paid position, you will need to report taxes essentially for the paid employment, for the money that you are receiving. Since you are here in the US and you are employed and that company is reporting taxes on your behalf. In order for them to make sure that you are compliant with tax regulations, you do need to provide them with what is known as a social security number. This number is a number that you will hold for life, and it's a card that basically has a number on it, and you can remember that number, memorize it. But the card will say that it is not valid without Department of Homeland Security authorization, which basically means that the social security number that you receive cannot be used until it is properly paired with work authorization. So different kinds of work authorizations might be on-campus employment, off-campus employment through CPT, or maybe after you graduate, employment authorization through post-completion OPT. A lot of these terms might be very foreign to you all, but basically you can't just use your social security number to start working anywhere. It has to be paired with proper work authorization. So again, just make sure that you are not starting any type of employment, especially if it's paid, until you have the proper work authorization. Please visit iwork.ucsd.edu to explore different types of employment available to you during as well as after your program. And so that you do not engage in any type of unpaid or illegal employment. All right, so we went over very quickly a lot of information here. We have about 5 or so minutes to go through some questions. But before we do that, I want to just jump into travel and emergencies. Oh, here's that website, itravel.ucsd.edu. Please refer to this website to learn about documents that you need to enter the US or re-enter the US, carrying documents when you're traveling, visiting our neighbors in Mexico, or perhaps traveling in and out of Canada, and also what your travel signature might be referring to and how to make sure that you have that on the second page of your Form I-20 or first page, bottom right-hand corner of your DS 2019. On our iOrientation website, where you registered for this session, under the Contact Us form, we do have a download button for our emergency contacts. I highly recommend you all keep this on your phones as a digital copy, but it looks like this. It is a list basically of all of our numbers if you ever have trouble at the port of entry when you're traveling. It also has some useful tips if you're ever detained or arrested by law enforcement. So really, really handy to keep on file. For all emergencies, if you're physically on campus, make sure that you have campus police line, and that also is here on this emergency card. Okay, so we have reached the end of our session. So I see that we have a lot of questions that Kyle has already answered for us, but we have a few that we want to talk about out loud. So I can go ahead and I can start reading to see which classes, or sorry, which questions we've gotten the most of, and we can try to answer them out loud for everyone. Okay, let me do this one. Oh, let's see here. Okay, how much time does it take for my status to be activated? All right, so this is a really great question. Whenever you submit the check-in form to us in the iPortal, and one of our team members will review your request to make sure that everything is in the right place so that we can actually request that we activate your CVIS record. Once we submit an activation, it usually does take about 24 hours. However, as you can imagine, we have hundreds of students traveling at this time. And so we are checking your I-94s and reviewing your check-in requests one by one. At this time, we are seeing higher pending processing times for check-ins. So as long as you've submitted it to us, not to worry if we don't get to it by that specific due date listed on your application, but we should get to it within about 5 to 7 days of submission. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's go to the next question here. I'm unable to update my current address to complete the document check-in. because Triton Link automatically updates my address to the on-campus address. However, the start date of the new on-campus address is September 18th, and it is not allowing me to edit that. Okay, so it's a good question. If you are living on campus, your Triton Link should default to your on-campus address, and that's okay. It looks like September 18th is tomorrow, so it will eventually be your current address. That's no problem. Go ahead when you're going through the check-in form, mark that, yes, your Triton Link is up to date. As of tomorrow, it will be. And then you should be able to proceed through the check-in form as normal. Okay, we have a good question. Do I still need to submit the check-in to activate my CVIS record if I was in the US for the full year of 2020 and started school earlier with a summer prep class? So I don't think that you will need to submit the check-in if you already submitted it in fall 2020. But basically, once you arrived to the US and you started your program, you should have submitted a check-in. If you did not submit a check-in, then you do need to come and talk to us. I will input our contact information here in the chat. icontact.ucsd.edu. It has our contact form where you can submit a question. It also has our drop-in hours and also our front desk hours if you want to come on campus and ask us a question. I would recommend that if you started your program in 2020 and you are here with us during orientation, but you've been enrolled for a full year already, that you do make sure that you submitted the check-in in the past. If not, come and talk to us so we can look into your specific case. Okay. Okay. All right. So these are really great questions. I think we have time for about one more. Let's see. Where can I see the Zoom recording? So you can visit iwebinars.ucsd.edu, and in about a week, I think those should be available once they're edited and posted online. Okay. Okay, very good. So I think that is all the time that we have today. So Kyle, I'll go ahead and I can pass it back to you now for additional information before we end our session. Okay, we can move on to this next slide here.
Give me one moment.
Sure, that's all right. Everyone had really great questions, so I'm really happy to hear these.
Okay, so I want to talk about the I-orientation meetups. These are a great way for you to connect with other international students at UC San Diego. And there are two different types of meetups that we are offering. You can do it either interest-based or based on region. So if it's like on interest-based, it would be maybe you are interested in hiking, or maybe you're interested in cooking or food. You can get matched with an interest group and talk with students who share the same interests with you. Or you could do regional groups. So if you're, you can maybe, which is based on like the region of the world that you're from. You can also meet up with students that way. And you can see these different groups by visiting iorientationucsd.com/meetup in order to register. Next slide, please. Okay. And if you want to know what's happening on our UC San Diego campus all year long, we actually have a calendar at ievents.ucsd.edu. And this is a live calendar that's continually updated, and it features globally engaged events hosted not only by ISPO, but by other campus departments and student organizations as well. And again, this is updated throughout the year. So if you want to view different events on campus, please visit ievents.ucsd.edu for the latest information. Finally, before we say goodbye, I want to give you all a few reminders. At the end of this session, you're going to get an email with a survey. And filling out this survey is how we will verify that you've attended this workshop and how you'll fulfill your minimum requirements for orientation. Now, keep in mind that this survey isn't sent out immediately, so please just watch your email over the next day for this survey to come in. And once it does, please fill it out. And also, once this webinar ends, the browser link that you opened earlier to join this webinar will automatically show the survey link as well. So you can visit the webinar link again if you want a link to the survey. The post-session email is going to be sent out tomorrow with the survey link, actually. And if you have any questions, you can email iprograms@ucsd.edu. I'll drop that in the chat really quick. Again, if you have any questions about the survey, please email iprograms@ucsd.edu. And you can also stay up to date by visiting iupdates.ucsd.edu for any information from ISPO. And as always, keep continually checking your UC San Diego email for our weekly ISPO newsletters. And lastly, contact.ucsd.edu, and also follow us on social media. And right there at the bottom are our social media links. So thank you everyone for attending today's session. And again, no matter from where you're attending, whether inside the US or from outside of the US, on behalf of the International Students and Programs Office here at UC San Diego, please enjoy the rest of your afternoon, your evening, or morning, and have a great fall quarter. And we'll see all of you soon at our next events.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.